Mark Rogers TV on the big game this week, LSU and Alabama. But before we break down the Tigers and the Tide, let's put an end to this ridiculous dispute. Can Alabama beat an NFL team? Now, we hear this from time to time every few years when there's an outstanding team in college football. Can they compete against an NFL team? It's ridiculous to think that the Alabama Crimson Tide or any college football team can stay with an NFL team. Let's break it down here. Alabama will produce about 8 to 9 NFL players this fall. Okay, they will have about that many drafted. So over the 4 years, looking at each class, Alabama probably has about 30 to 35 players currently on the roster that will be drafted into the NFL. Well, first of all, not all of those players will make an NFL team. Let's say most of them will. Probably at least 3/4 of those players will make it to the NFL. So that's great that they've got 25 to 35 players who will play one day in the NFL. Well, that's still going up against 53 players who currently do play in the NFL. The other thing to take into consideration is that those players are not NFL ready right now. Especially we're talking about freshmen and sophomore. No way can they compete against 25, 26-year-old grown men as freshmen and sophomores. They're not as smart, they're not as skilled, they're not as fast, they're not as strong as they're going to be in 3, 4, 5, 6 years. We're talking about 18, 19, 20-year-old kids. And again, we're talking about 25 to 35 of them going up against 53 grown NFL players. Pete Carroll's been asked this, and specifically back in his days at USC, and if you look at those rosters, we're talking about some of the most talented NFL-ready rosters in the history of college football. And he repeatedly would say, as he did this week again, there's no way that a college team can compete against NFL teams, especially in the trenches. The interior line play is devastating in the NFL. Brute force would be a mismatch, taking again an NFL team, even the worst, the Jaguars, the Cleveland Browns, against an NFL team like Alabama. Hopefully, we've put that to rest. It would be fun to watch. It would be fun to see if an Alabama could put a touchdown on the board early in the game and maybe put a little bit of a scare and make it a little bit interesting for a while. But I'm guessing that Jacksonville would beat Alabama by at least 40 points. Okay, that's the question of the week, but really the relevant question of the week is, can Alabama beat LSU? Of course, they did in the huge BCS National Championship game last year, 21-0, and Alabama seems to be the far superior team right now. Both teams, you talk about NFL talent, loaded with NFL talent. I don't care about Oregon, I don't care about Kansas State or Notre Dame, and I don't care how many games LSU loses this season. It may be 2 or 3, but LSU is the second most talented team in college football to this Alabama team. LSU is loaded with NFL talent, especially, of course, on defense. The big differences in these two teams, first, the glaring difference is at quarterback. A.J. McCarron is a champion. He's poised, he's smart, he makes the right decisions, he's confident. 18 touchdowns this season, no picks, 69% completion percentage for A.J. McCarron. Zach Mettenberger, on the other hand, for LSU has been erratic. He's underachieved. He's hesitant. He has not been a great leader on the field for the LSU Tigers. He's got 7 touchdowns and 4 picks this season. That's one big difference. Then the other one is just the personality of the teams. And people often say that teams take on the personality of the head coach, and it's certainly true in the case of Alabama and LSU. LSU, they feed off momentum and energy, just like their coach. They shoot from the hip. They play with reckless abandon. Alabama, on the other hand, yes, they're tenacious, and they get after you. They're nasty, but believe me, they're certainly smart and poised and disciplined. That's the big difference. Nick Saban, Les Miles, Alabama, LSU. Okay, we've painted this as an Alabama rout, but let's look at how LSU can possibly win this game. First of all, with a great defense. They've got playmakers all over the place, whether it's Reid or Kevin Minter or Mingo at defensive end, especially Barkevious Mingo at defensive end. He's got a mismatch on the outside. He needs to be a playmaker on Saturday night against Alabama and really fluster A.J. McCarron. The Tide is not turning over the football. LSU is going to have to turn the ball over and give it to its offense in great field position. Number 2, the LSU ground game. We figure that nobody can run against Alabama, and that might be true. LSU could not run against Florida, but there's a ray of hope here against South Carolina, who's got a tremendous NFL-ready front seven. LSU ran it down their throats in the fourth quarter with Jeremy Hill gaining 124 yards. And third for LSU, it's back to Zach Mettenberger. There's got to be a reason that this guy is playing for one of the top 5 programs in the country. He's looked bad, he's looked hesitant, has not made the plays, and he's been erratic throwing the football at 56%. But if he steps up and plays the game of his life thus far, LSU definitely has a chance, because this game, of course, is in Death Valley. Don't see all of that playing out. We see a good but not great football game. LSU is going to make some plays on defense, going to get the ground game going, and give Mettenberger some chances in the play-action passing game. LSU stays in it, but Alabama puts it on the throttle in the fourth quarter and gets it going and starts to break down that LSU defense. Bama wins it over LSU 24-13. Need to hear from you on the big game. Number 1,